What's up, everybody? Heat Ratio Live. I'm your host, Tony Jason Cotillo, joined by Mr. Dan Old School. I gotta ask Dan what the old school came from. I'm not sure what the old school came from. Hold that for a minute. Remember that for a second. But just so everybody knows, let's get the comments flowing tonight. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Took last week off. We just made, it's summertime. Had to relax a little bit. A lot of things going on right now, exclusively on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscription button. We want to get those subscribers up. We're up to 338, kind of, up and down a little bit, trying to get that flow going. Football season start. A lot of things to talk about. We'll talk about some Joel Embiid. We'll talk about some Jalen Hurts, NBA Big Three. And then specifically for Mr. Old School Dan Green, we're going to talk a little Guns N' Roses at the end for our music segment. But Dan, where did the old school come from?
Well, I'm despite my good looks and young appearance, I am probably the oldest member of this HRS crew, and I often reference the good old days, hence old school, especially on hockey. Fighting, and I've referenced players, like Gary Dornhofer. You know who he is, Stone?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Boris Kinderchuk?
No.
Ross Lonsberry?
No.
Old school. See, I'm old school.
Well, listen, just so everybody doesn't know, Mr. Dan Old School Green is the leader of the Flyer Noise podcast, obviously powered by Heat Ratio Sports, who are doing a tremendous job. If you follow him on Twitter, one of our most active people. Now it's he's making he's like a logo superstar, Mr. Dan. We've created a monster here at Heat Ratio Sports when it comes to Dan Green, and he's loving every minute of it, ain't you?
Yeah, it's listen, technology can be intimidating, or you can embrace it and have fun with it. And I choose to have fun with it. I'm a teacher also, so I like embracing technology, and Canva is a fun platform to do some cool artistic and graphic work.
It really is. Canva is something that if you don't know about it, you need to know about it because it can help you out tremendously, and we're learning every single day. But let's get right into this because I was going to start this show off this week because I prepare all week for this show. I was going to start off with Jalen Hurts because the whole thing came out about Jalen Hurts being a franchise quarterback. Is it too early? Is it not? I'm not saying that I want to copycat what other shows are maybe doing, but I want to talk about it because I've been so behind Jalen Hurts, number one, as the person, number two, as the quarterback going back to last year. But the breaking news drops the other day. The Shams bomb, not the Woj bomb, comes out with Joel Embiid getting locked up with a supermax, Dan, a supermax, ton and tons of money for Mr. Joel Embiid. To be specific, the man got locked up right now. First we're going to talk money. We'll talk about, these are some quotes from Doc Rivers. This is obviously a great day for the 76ers, but more importantly, it is an amazing statement from Joel that has become one of the league's best and wants to continue to dominate right here in Philadelphia. His best is yet to come. I'm sure Ben Simmons loved every minute of that. And then Joel is definition of elite, a role model in our community, true MVP caliber superstar on the court. Since he was drafted in 2014, his rare blend of skills, charisma, and leadership has transformed this franchise. We couldn't be more grateful and excited to continue watching him in a Sixers uniform. Comes from the 76ers Magic partner, Mr. Josh Harris. So, Dan, let's just talk just specifically, okay? Because we already know we've had so many discussions about the Philadelphia 76ers. We have so many discussions about Joel Embiid. And this $196 commitment, essentially a 6-year extension. I want to know from you that, in my opinion, I'm gonna tell that later. But in your opinion, how many prime years does Joel Embiid have left? And how many years do you think the Sixers actually get value out of this deal? We know we're going to get it right now, obviously. But knowing the guy who's had multiple injuries, he's had surgeries in the past, right? We already know he wears down. He is a big man. How many prime years do you think this contract is actually of value for the Philadelphia 76ers?
Well, first off, the number equates to $43.5 million a year. That's what it breaks down to.
We're in the wrong business, my friend.
Just a bit. I'll take his decimal point. Now, he's 27 years old. Listen, it had to be done. I understand why they did it. He's averaged. I read this today. He averages 29.5 points per minute played. That's the best in NBA history. It's a double entendre, though, right? It's a great stat, right? He averages 29, but he's often injured, so it's minutes played. So technically, it's not when he plays 35 minutes a game because he doesn't nearly average that much because he misses so much time. I would love this year at the beginning of the year, he came in great shape, but he got so caught up in this trend in the NBA, which is almost like watching European soccer where all they do is flop. And when you're 7'2" and you're flopping after every layup attempt, you're going to cause yourself harm. And that's why I think he hurt his back, he hurt his knee on a flop. The guy's like a redwood tree for hitting the ground every time he plays his drama routine. So he has to curb that. And I actually hope the league institutes a flop rule for 3-point shots for layup. I can't stand that anymore. So if they clean that up in the league, maybe he won't hit the ground as much, if you know what I mean. But yeah, his wear and tear is a huge concern. If we can get him to 31, 32, I'd be thrilled.
That's a good call, man. Because I agree. I think we've talked about a window of opportunity for the 76ers team. We've continued to talk about it, right? How much they have, and we haven't even talked about the Ben Simmons effect, right? Whether he's going to be, well, he's not going to be here, but who's going to be here instead of Ben Simmons, obviously. But the biggest thing is building around your superstar. You take your most important player, which is Joel Embiid, and you build around him. And you referenced this, and I'm glad you referenced it because I did bring it up by Hembo from Get Up ESPN, that most points per 36 minutes all time. This is an absolutely insane list. And it just shows you how important Joel Embiid is to not only the 76ers, but to the NBA, and how much of a superstar he is right now. Most points per 36 minutes all time. Guess who's on top? Joel Embiid at 29.3. And for those who are going to listen on podcasts who are not seeing this for the visual aspects of this live show, the next person on the list, Michael Jordan at 28.3. George Gervin, 28.1. Right? Kevin Durant, 26.5. Harden, 26.3. Steph Curry, 25.4. And LeBron James at 25.4. Dan, is there a better list to top than that list right there?
Well, that's exactly why I brought it up. It's a double-edged sword, in my opinion. He's top of the list, but he doesn't really equate to those minutes truly. So, I'd rather him drop to 27.5 points a game and actually get 36 minutes in per game. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I agree. Al checking in. What's up, Al? Checking in on Twitch. Our man Kyle checking in. He says, I'm okay with this contract. This is prime time for Philly. Need to complete the puzzle. Kyle, I could not agree more.
He is the puzzle.
Yes, he and the issue now is, and this is why I've been so adamant about the Sixers and their progress, and unfortunately their limitations when it comes to the playoffs, because we have a window. It's a small window, man. It's a small window. Everything was lined up for us. Listen, if we play to our abilities, we're in the finals, man. There's no reason to lose against the Hawks. The year before, no reason to lose. The year before that, no reason to lose, right? And that's the problem that I have. The problem I have is this team has been coming up too short, too much, and now it's time to change, Dan.
No, that Atlanta series will live with me for quite a while, because if they beat Atlanta, the what-if question just will always linger.
It will.
This was our year. It was the roadmap was set for us, and it was a disgrace, actually. And I don't want to relive it right now because I'll just get apoplectic, and I don't want to do that right now.
No. Listen, and there's no. You're right, but you know what? There's not a need to, permeate on this point. There's really not. I mean, Joel Embiid got paid. He deserved to get paid. He's the leader of the team, right? And here, I'll tell you what. Here's the funny thing: Joel Embiid at $43 million. If I'm not mistaken, Chris Paul turned down $44 million. Right? Dennis Schroeder turned down $40 million.
Talk about a mistake.
Well, his agent should be fired. Absolutely fired for walking away for that kind of money, right? So yeah. So listen, it is what it is. The missing piece, like Kyle was talking about, is what happens to Ben Simmons, right? We all know, and I don't want to get on a huge discussion about that. But one thing I will say is, I think Dan, you're going to agree where he's not going to be back. He cannot be back. He cannot come back. His reign here is done. I'm not sure where he's going to go. I do know it'll be a 3 or 4 team trade because of money and because of what's going to have to be maneuvered around. But he will not be in this city anymore, and he doesn't want to play in this city. And I don't need him here, to be honest with you. I really don't. I don't need somebody that's not all in. He's not an all in player. See, here's what I will say. Dan, tell me if you agree with this. I was thinking about this the other day. Everybody, I heard a couple people say, oh, you know what? It's like nobody was mad at Terrell Owens and he was all about himself. Different kind of scenario. Terrell Owens, yes, was all about T.O., right? But the dude played on a broken friggin' leg in the Super Bowl. Okay, that just wasn't about money. That was because T.O. wanted to win. You're not going to see Ben Simmons do something. He doesn't have that kind of attitude, that kind of enthusiasm for the game. He just doesn't. He's all about Ben, and he's not going to go all in. He will never go all in, right? So I think that's why people, have to understand, especially from a national perspective, when they say, "Oh, you're running Ben Simmons out of town." And the last thing I will say, I heard somebody talking about, I don't even know who it was talking about whoever criticizes Ben Simmons doesn't know basketball. Okay, well, listen. I don't know what basketball school you went to or who taught you how to play the game. Okay, but from what I see, okay, from being a basketball coach, from playing ball, from studying the game, no, man, that's not how you play. So I don't know, Dan. Am I wrong here?
No. This is a league where you're a veteran at 25. You're coming in at 19. It's one and done in college, and you're in the NBA as a 19, 20-year-old kid. He's not a kid anymore. So I am so sick and tired that he has time to work on his game. BS. All I wanted from him was a 6 to 12-foot stop and pop jump shot occasionally. I could care less about threes. The guy won't even take a baby jump shot. And let's face it, he misses his share of bunny layups as well. Yeah, he's got some special talent. There's no doubt about it. But to be called generational, you have to put the ball in the hoop consistently. You've got to put the team on your back. He should have been averaging 20 points a game this year. You got to take that next progression. If you want to be part of the big three, if your big man often is hurt, Tobias was hurt a little bit with a bad back. You got to take the team on your back. Now, he did that prior to the All-Star game because he was a fringe player to make the All-Star team. So then he decides, I'm going to play hard. And that goes to your point that I don't think he has that inner drive to be great. He's just coasting, and it's working for him so far.
Listen, I completely agree. We see this a lot. Okay, we see this a lot where young athletes are coddled their entire careers, right? And what happens is when they're coddled and they're allowed to permeate I'll say the rules of the game, so to speak, they always think that they can do that, right? That they can always do that. And Ben Simmons was never challenged. Ben Simmons was never told he needs to do something else. It was, you know what, he will get by. And not just that, he knew he would get by, right? He knew he would get by until this point. And now he doesn't know how to react. It's like all of a sudden, oh my God, what's going on? I can't get by. What's going to happen now, right? And that's what we're seeing right now. And that's what we see in those playoffs, where he figured out he could not get by. And because he couldn't get by, he didn't know what to do. Jay checking in says, at this point, I think Ben Simmons is here until the trade deadline to build his stock again. I'll tell you what, Jay. And he follows out, says, it'll be ugly. No doubt. Here's what I will say about that. I think that's playing with fire. I do. Because he's just not going to play. Right? He's not going to play. His representation has already come out and alluded to that fact. You already found out that he's not happy with his representation, which means if they force him to play, he's just going to fire them. Right? This is who we're dealing with right now. So I think you're playing with fire. I think right now Daryl Morey's job is to do the best that he can do and get the best that he can do. Okay. And again, let me say this. Everybody has to realize that we may not get the haul that you think we deserve. Okay. But if we have a player on the team who is not producing, who is not there mentally, and who's not helping this team win, isn't it more important, Dan, to get somebody that actually will help this team win, even if it's a guy that you may not think is a superstar, right? It's not Damian Lillard. Okay, maybe it's CJ McCollum instead. All I'm saying is, all I know is we need somebody who's going to help us win, not cause a problem on the court.
No, you're right. And to Jay's point, where I get where he's going, because the trade was supposed to happen at the draft, it didn't. Even let's go on the premise that he does stay professional and he does play his ass off until the trade deadline, which is not going to happen. But let's go on that premise. The general managers are smart. There's a regular season Ben and there's playoff Ben. So it really doesn't matter to me that he's going to build up his stock again, because he's not the same player in the playoffs. So that's where that little point goes out the window. Jay, I get what you're saying, but that's where I disagree with you. And yeah, I don't know. You know, you've seen debates back and forth on social media about who has leverage. Where the hell do we have any leverage? So when you say get a respectable player that wants to be here and they'll contribute to the team, I think you're ultimately right. We're going to get, here's the old school coming out of me: Andrew Lang, Tim Perry, Jeff Hornacek. Who do we get for those guys?
Charles Barkley, man.
Right.
So I mean, and that's, I think there was a little different time, because at least with Charles Barkley was a player. He was all in, right? So at least at that point, even though he wanted out, right, he was still playing at a top level.
But I'm saying, and you're right, but considering he was at a top level, look at that horrible return we got for him. So imagine the return you're getting for a guy that's not playing at a top level. That's my ultimate. I mean, it's a 30-year-old analogy, so maybe it doesn't relate. No. But I don't know what you can get back, unless you said the machinations of a 3-4 team trade. Maybe you get someone's disgruntled player and it all works out. But I think was it Andre brought up a point about Jimmy Butler made Ben uncomfortable. That's a huge point. That should have motivated and pushed him. It worked. It worked the opposite, and then Jimmy couldn't wait to lead this team. So,
listen, if Jimmy's here, we don't lose. Simple as that.
No.
Right?
I mean,
simple as that.
And real fast before I'm sure you want to go another topic. A lot of the people are blaming Joel's fourth quarters and, yada, yada, yada. He wouldn't have been exhausted if he was the only guy that was the go-to person on the team. Tobias looked scared at the end of the games. Ben obviously took 4 shots total in like 3 or 4 fourth quarters. He was exhausted. He needs help. And that's why his numbers dwindled in the fourth quarter.
I couldn't disagree more. I mean, I couldn't agree more, honestly. Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't agree more. It's a great point. It's a great point. Al says, wherever Ben is going to come back, and it will be because he's not getting traded. Al, he's getting traded. Okay, it's right. I like, honestly, he's getting traded, and you cannot bring a cancer back to this team. Okay, and obviously, it was cancerous, right? We see that now, and you don't think it's a cancerous situation? What's going on right now? Right, with him being completely segmented from the team, he's segregated right now. He's segregated from the entire team. He's not talking to anybody. He doesn't care, right? So guess what? I don't care now. I don't. Get out. I don't want to hear the words generational talents anymore. I don't want to hear superstars. I don't want to hear nothing. Listen, you know what Ben wants to do? Ben wants to go be a B-ball player Okay, not an A ball player, a B ball player for the Golden State Warriors, under an MVP, under a shot master, and get all the accolades for being the guy who facilitates to both of these guys in Clay and Steph. So then the spotlight's off of him. He's not in a big media network. He's not in a big town that worries about what they do. Then he can go buy his high profile cars. He can go to Wimbledon. He can do whatever he wants. Listen, told everybody this is who Ben was. If you did not realize this is who Ben was, then the problem is you got hoodwinked, man. You bought in. You bought into a fraud. You bought into a fraud. It's simple as that. I didn't like Ben in the beginning, and I don't like Ben now. And I don't. I don't care what anybody says. You can argue with me until I'm blue in the face. But like you said, Dan, 5 years, all of a sudden it's going to change. All of a sudden. It's going to change. We don't have time to watch Instagram videos. We don't have time to hear coach speak. Okay. And honestly, all the stuff that you heard after the game from Joel Embiid, from Doc Rivers, who everybody's killing him for about saying, they should never say that about Ben. That's the problem. Ben got a complex because, Doc said, I don't know if I can win with him as a point guard. Okay. Well, guess what? Tough love, bro. Okay, guess what? This is what they feel. These are your teammates. Just like you said, Dan, these are the guys that were killing themselves all game long where you couldn't manage more than 4 shots in that game when we needed you. Says enough. That's all we need to see because we've seen this over and over again, and I'm tired of seeing it. So guess what? I'm moving on. Don't care. Ben, see it. Let's talk about a guy who is a leader, okay? Let's talk about a guy who is a leader. Mike, what's up, Mike? Bring the fire. Absolutely, Mike. Mike presses me today. Mike was like, yo, when you guys going live, man, I got some questions. So bring him, Mike. Bring him, Mike. Let's hear him. But let's talk about a guy who's a leader, okay? And we're going to get back to the NBA because I'm going to talk big threes, but I got to get off the subject because it's making me really pissed off. So let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles because this is Eagles season, okay? And this is football time. And I don't care if it's Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Bryce Harper, Carter Hart, and the Philadelphia Flyers. Doesn't matter. The Philadelphia Eagles rule when it comes to sports in Philadelphia. So one of the things I wanted to talk about because we didn't really touch on the first preseason game, and I don't want to get into preseason because I think it's way over the top. Because what I do with preseason games, I look at little tidbits here and there. Certain players, look at their hand movements, look at what they do, kind of motor they have, and things of that nature. But one thing I think, Dan, that you'll probably agree with, not talking about talent, just talking about mentality. But Jalen Hurts, we've said this before. I don't want to repeat it about all the adversity that he's dealt with throughout his entire career. But right now, it's still to this day, not technically named the number 1 quarterback, which I think is a travesty. I do. I think it's a slap in the face. And I think if it were me right there, I'd be saying something, but that's just not who he is. But the stories that you hear about Jalen Hurts in the clubhouse, okay, at NovaCare, walking down the hall, stopping Jalen Reagor, asking him, hey, what do we do on 3rd and 5? Stopping Devontae Smith, say, yo, you get that playbook memorized? Like, that is a leader. This is a kid who is true in and out. And I want to read you something because I want to get the ideas going, and I want everybody to get their opinions ready because this came out today. And this is from our good friends at Edge of Philly Sports. My man Tom Kelly does a fantastic job over there. They posted this on their site right here. Okay, this is from Jordan Schultz. Says there is a fast-growing sentiment among Eagles players that Jalen Hurts is undoubtedly, he said undoubtedly, the franchise quarterback. His work ethic, intangibles, and overall skill level have captured the entire locker room. Players I've spoken with are consistently blown away by Hurts on and off the field. So what I want to say, Dan, is I think the last part of that is the most important part when it says on and off the field. We're dealing with situations in the NFL. Speaking of guys like Deshaun Watson, okay, guys like Joe Mixon, in the past, guys like Ray Rice, okay, we've dealt with these issues every single year. You have a guy who is his culture and his mindset are A+, okay, and that's number 1. That's what you want in a leader, and he's showing you that. So all that talk about Deshaun Watson. I mean, now the FBI are getting probed. They're like, that situation is a complete mess. Why? And I don't even want to hear his name anymore associated with the Philadelphia Eagles. You have a kid right here, a young kid, Dan, who is ready to lead, who is a leader, who's not being probed by the FBI, who's not beating a woman in the face, okay, in the coffee mart, okay? He's not coming out and, talking nonsense. Okay, this is a true leader, a leader of men. And I don't know, honestly, if he's a franchise quarterback, but what I will say, Dan, is I think he's a franchise leader.
No, I can't argue with anything you said. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback is the question of the day. I'm going to equate Jalen Hurts to now bear with me on this, a Donovan McNabb type from this perspective. He's got unbelievable intangibles for leadership, which you just address wonderfully, but he's going to be a playmaking quarterback. He's not going to be a pure passing quarterback. Donovan McNabb was a playmaking quarterback. He had some awful touch moments. He doesn't have the pedigree that Donovan had, but he's got more elite leadership than Donovan had. Donovan never would take a bullet. He would never look himself in the mirror and take blame. This kid will. I see him struggling with his accuracy, but I see him being a playmaker, almost like the basketball analogy where you're not a pure shooter, but you're a scorer. So I think he's going to make plays, but he's going to have those moments where like, oh my God, how did he miss that throw? But then he's going to do some electrifying things. Hopefully it'll balance out.
I completely agree. I think it's a great observation, honestly. Adam, what's up, Adam? As always, checking in. Adam says, I think Jalen will ball out this year. I like it. Jay says, I agree. Jalen Hurts is acting like a starting quarterback. Use the number ones in next year's draft to get some more talent. Jay, I completely agree. Jay checking in, Sports Skillet Radio. As always, check out Sports Skillet every Sunday right here. Heat Racer Sports, 11 a.m. Guys do a fantastic job, as always. And what I will say about Jalen Hurts is you hit the nail on the head, Dan, because I've been saying this all off season, that the Eagles are going to be very fun to watch at times, but they're going to lose some games, right? They're not going to win a ton of games. I still think they may win 9 or 10 games. I'm going to be honest. I do, only because of the division that they play in. I still think they win 9 to 10 games, but my thing is they're going to make some mistakes, man. They're a young team. Right? Jalen Hurts, a young quarterback. We've already seen it in training camp. He doesn't make every throw, right? He doesn't throw worm burners like McNabb, right? But McNabb did do that, right? McNabb did do that. But I think, Dan, you remember, just like I do, one of the most fondest memories I have is when he came in for his first game against the Redskins, right? And I think was it Darryl Green? That he juked out. I think it was towards the end of Darryl Green's career, maybe, when he juked him out. I may be wrong, but that's the vision I have at Donovan. Donovan was able to do that kind of magic with his feet, but Donovan had one hell of an arm.
Yeah.
Right? He one hell of an arm. He could throw the hell out of a football. Wasn't always accurate, but he could throw the hell out of a football. So, and I think that we've seen plays. The play in Green Bay, we've seen from Jalen Hurts. We've seen that nice touch throw to Goddard in the preseason game. We've seen the throw to Miles Sanders, right? We've seen a couple different plays from Jalen Hurts to say, you know what? Okay, if he can put it all together, and again, the biggest thing, let's go back to the mentality thing. The reason why mentality is so important. Because if he throws a couple bad throws, right? If he has a couple bad games, this kid is so strong mentally that he will not lose focus, and he's going to keep trying and trying and trying. One thing you're never going to question is this kid's effort. That's all right. And I've coached kids like this. Dan, you've coached kids like this, and they're the best kind of kids to coach. Because you fight for them and you rally behind them, and when they win, you win. When they lose, you lose. And I think Jalen Hurts is that kind of guy.
Nah, you stole my thunder. I mean, I use the term would go through fire, would run through a wall. That's what his teammates will do for him. They're going to know, listen, they're not dumb. They're going to see the mistakes. He's probably going to he's going to say my bad in the huddle. and the guys are probably going to say, "We got you, we got you." They're going to go through fire and run through walls for this kid, and that's why I was hoping and dismissing the whole Deshaun Watson talk, because I'm like you, I like character, and let's see what this kid's got. Let him grow a little bit, before you jump ship, and maybe you'll Smith and Watkins, all these guys they'll grow together and develop chemistry, and again, the leadership will make the players run through a wall for him. Take the extra step in traffic for a ball, whereas maybe they wouldn't have done that for Carson, right? So, you run through a wall for a teammate that you love.
I like that. So true. I mean, maybe that seam across the middle isn't always there. Maybe, Zach Ertz. Well, I shouldn't say Zach Ertz because that was Carson's boy, but maybe Dallas Goedert doesn't go across the middle and take that hit, up against that big linebacker like a Khalil Mack going across the middle, right? You don't know, but maybe these guys do that for Jalen Hurts, right? So that is the difference. Now, Adam says, does 9 and 10 wins win the division? Absolutely. I think 10 wins this division, maybe 11 because of the extra game, but I still think 10 wins the division. I do. And I still think the Eagles have as good a shot as anybody. I really like Washington. Been on record talking about them only because I still believe the game is won between the trenches, and they have the best defense in the National League, or in the National League, in the NFC East. But I listen, their defense. Chase Young, are you kidding me? I mean, under Jack Del Rio is something of beauty to watch. It really is. And I obviously the Eagles can't compete with that, but it's all going to depend for Washington on their quarterback play. Is Fitzmagic going to be able to hold up? Because that's all they missed last year was a quarterback, right? I mean, so yes, I think 10 wins the division easily. And I think the Eagles can be in that mix, because this division is going to be so up and down. It really is. But one guy, Dan, that's really, really impressed me. And again, he's not a rookie. Is Javon Hargrave. Now, when we signed him out of Pittsburgh, a lot of people thought, why we sign another defensive tackle, right? We a lot of people thought about that, and I did too. I was one of them. And obviously, I guess, in Howie's infinite wisdom, and I'm not a Howie guy here. I'm not going to praise Howie at all, but he was looking at the age of up front and saying, okay, we have a guy in Fletcher Cox, obviously, and then we have Jackson, who we don't know if he's going to perform, right? And it looked like he was expendable. And now Javon Hargrave, remember, he did get hurt last year, so he came back. He wasn't full out, but he's showing that explosiveness that he had in Pittsburgh. And one thing about Pittsburgh defensive tackles, we watched Casey Hampton for years out there do the same kind of thing. Man, can they get to the quarterback, man. They are quick. They have those quick arm spin moves, and they go in they go in that stance, they get up, and they get it the best with anybody. So I really like Hargrave. I really like what I've seen in the preseason. I know it's only the preseason, but then seeing what this guy didn't do last year and seeing what he's done so far, just his movement, I think we have something to look forward to this year.
No, he's a very good player. My brother-in-law is a diehard Steelers fan, and I'm sure you've talked with our man John. And he wasn't overly optimistic about the signing. He said the Steelers are a 3-4 team. The Eagles are a 4-3 team, and that makes a big difference. So part of his growth with the Eagles, outside of getting healthy again, is getting used to the 4-3 scheme. Because you're asked to do different things. Like you just said, in a 3-4, you got to get to the quarterback. In a 4-3, you're more reliant on your ends to get to the quarterback. So there's some adjustments in the scheme. But when he's healthy, and he looks to be healthy, he's an impressive D tackle.
He is. He really is. And that's exactly what they need. They need the win up front, right? They need to win up front. Now, Jay checking in says, can you imagine Quez Watkins? I like this question. Can you imagine Quez Watkins, Devontae Smith, and another number one if Rigger doesn't improve? Really cool. Oh, how about that 6'7" tight end Tyree Jackson? Listen, Jay brings up a great point, and a point that I was talking about earlier, where this is a young and exciting team. Now, listen, the jury's going to be out on Jalen Reagor all year. And you know what, Jalen? Listen, prayers up to whoever you lost. I get it, right? I understand, mentality and mindset, mental stability and mindset are a huge thing in this world, especially today. I get it, but don't be popping off on social media when people start coming at you because you're not performing like that number one pick. I'm just saying, you need to be careful. You threw yourself out there pretty much last year when people were calling you out. You kept throwing it out there, so you better be ready to take it. So I want to see improvement. I do, but Jay's right. Listen, the best, even though Joe Flacco threw the ball, the best play tonight obviously was the 80-yard touchdown by Quez Watkins, right? But that showed the explosiveness. And again, what that showed, Dan, is we don't know what we're going to get with Sirianni. But when we watched the Indianapolis Colts last year, no matter who was up at quarterback, they made plays like that a lot. They loved throwing it to their tight end. They loved running the ball, and they loved those little bubble screens. They really did. So this could be something that really takes us to that next level. This year, no. But to build with this kind of talent and this nucleus, I mean, we're looking at Cincinnati right now, and I don't know what Joe Burrow is going to be after that horrific injury. I think it's going to be at least a half a year before he gets his mentality back. But you look at what they've done, where with their receiving core out there, right? When you got Jamar Chase now, right? You got Tyler Boyd, you got T. Higgins. I mean, listen, that's exactly what the Eagles are trying to build. So, Jay, I think you're right, man. I think this is the kind of excitement I think we could be. Dan, Devontae Smith, real fast. Does the size bother you at all?
If it came down to Chase or Smith, I would have gone Chase because of the size. But once Chase was off the board, the kid learned how to play with the size. And, let's not forget, Deshaun Jackson was a tiny receiver. And he only was missing games at the later stages of his career with hamstring type issues. He never he took that vicious hit against Atlanta in his early part of his career with the Eagles. But any receiver was going to get, creamed and not miss a few games over a hit like that. But real fast, to Jay's point, my biggest prayer is that the Eagles go with performance over pedigree. And that's, because in theory, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has no business being on this team anymore. You can't put a Tyree Jackson on the practice squad because he won't stay on it. You've got to, if it's between him and Richard Rodgers, buy Richard Rodgers. This kid is a stud. A few years ago, the Vikings had Treadwell, an undrafted Thielen, and a 5th-round draft pick Diggs. Diggs and Thielen played a lot, and Treadwell did not because he didn't earn it. If those players were on the Eagles, Treadwell gets forced down your throat, and one of those two guys I mentioned gets cut because the Eagles are a pedigree team.
That's a great point. Where's Treadwell at right now? Right? Exactly. And that's the point. Exactly. And that's the point. It's a great point, right? Let's not mess around with this. That kid looks like an absolute stud.
Yeah.
And I know he's raw. I get it, right? But we're not winning this year. Not winning a Super Bowl this year. Our job is to develop young talent, to stockpile for next year and to build this thing, right? That's what it's all about. And I keep telling you guys, Rager can play. Listen, Al, I'm not saying the kid can't play. What I'm saying is, number one, there's more to the wide receiver position than speed. And the kid, to me, doesn't look like he can run a route and catch. I know he made that great catch, and everybody's going to talk about that great catch in practice, okay? In practice, right? But again, when you come into camp without the right mindset, and again, I understand things happen and things were going on, but you come in out of shape, right? You come in again not, and here's the other report that people aren't talking about, where he still doesn't know the playbook. Okay, that's a problem to me. Right? That's a problem to me. That I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. So all eyes are going to be on Jalen Reagor this year. No matter what, that's what they're going to be. They just are. The thing that does scare me, though, and I think I maybe people say I'm making too much out of this, Dan, but the one thing that I hated to see in that preseason game was that perfect ball dropped by Zach Ertz. Say what you want. And the reason why is, again, here's a guy who doesn't want to be here. Here's a guy who wanted to be out of here. And right now, I'm questioning his mindset. And that has to be the guy that's going to help your young quarterback. He's got to be the guy to help him. And he's already dropping balls. I didn't like that look, Dan.
No, I agree. But I do think they're actively looking to move him. And if they just cannot find a partner, all right. Great. We have Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, and hopefully they can develop this Jackson kid. But I do believe they're trying to move him. And like you said, he wants to be moved. And football's the one sport of all the sports where if you don't have your head in the game, you're an injury waiting to happen. So he has to get his head in the game or he's going to get hurt.
No, that's another good reason. I mean, obviously I don't want to see the guy get hurt. No. Right? I want guys and players on this field that are going to help not hurt this team. And to me, it just wasn't a good look. It just wasn't. Biggest thing I want to see is let's get through this preseason healthy, no more injuries. Let's get Devontae Smith back. Let's get him out on the field. Let's see what this offense is going to be. And I do hope that, because we don't know what Sirianni is. And one of the biggest problems I have with Cincinnati, who we alluded to earlier, is I think their head coach is a big time stiff. I'm not a Zach Taylor guy at all. I'm just not. I don't think he doesn't do it for me, man. And that's my thing with Sirianni. Let's put I hate to say this because it sounds cliche, but let's put our players in position to make plays, right? Let's put them in a position to make them successful. Know your quarterback's limitations. If your quarterback needs to roll out like Kyler Murray to make plays, let him roll out. Don't make him a pocket passer. Right, I understand that everybody wants to do that, but you have to play the strengths of who your guy is. Look what Bill Belichick did in New England. I think it was ingenious with what he's doing with Cam Newton. He knows Cam can't throw the ball down the field anymore. Nope. So he goes out and gets two big tight ends. And he says, you know what? I still threw to Greg Olsen for years in Carolina. He loves throwing to the tight end. I'm going to get him too. So now I don't have to throw the ball 40 yards downfield. I throw a 10-yard out and let the guys do the rest. So that's what I want to see Sirianni do. Know your players, know their limitations, and bank on what their skills are. And let's not expose what they can't do.
Now, did you see that feature that was on, I always want to say Comcast, but it's CSN Philly now, where they showed all the coaches, they were mic'd up, and it was very impressive. They seem to be a really talented young coaching staff with a lot of enthusiasm. They seem to have the players engaged. The players, the defensive back coach was staying after with Darius Slay, who was willing to stay after, and they were working in the back of the end zone one-on-one. That's stuff I like to see. So that little montage with the coaches mic'd up impressed me. And so, that's the number one thing. Like you just referenced Cincinnati, you could have all the talent in the world, but if you can just sense when a franchise is Detroit, they're never going to take that next step. They're just Detroit. They're just Cincinnati. We're the Eagles. We go through stages of highs, lows, back up to highs again. It's all predicated on the coaching staff.
No, I completely agree. I do.
Jay talent doesn't hurt either,
What's that?
A little talent doesn't hurt either, but
Well, obviously, talent at the end.
Coach the guys up.
Talent's always going to rule out, right? Jay says totally agree. Compete for it. If not, win a division, get young players, playoff experience. I agree. Al says, I agree, Tony. The coach should adjust to the team. Exactly. Adjust to the team, right? Don't let the players adjust to you. Adjust to the team. Take their talents out and figure out what they do best and work around that. Adam says, I saw the Eagles are plus 4,000 to win the Super Bowl if you bet. Plus that, I'll tell you what, man, maybe, if you got a nice bankroll, okay, I know people be hitting a lot lately. They got a nice bankroll. You throw $20 on that, man. I'll take that plus 4,000, right?
And Tone, to Al's point, look at Andy Reid. He went from an underachieving, he was a great coach here. Obviously, the best we've had is for longevity and whatnot, but he couldn't get over the hump. And a lot of it was, did he really play to the player's strength when he coached here? Look what he's done with Mahomes. He completely plays to the quarterback's strength. So he made the adjustment as a coach so that you have to utilize your player's strengths.
I completely agree. Al says Doug never did that.
No.
We know that. Doug never did that. And last thing, before we move on to our final segment, we'll do the big three next week because I want to keep the show flowing. But our man E-Rock, who checked in, who will be back on. E-Rock's going to be maybe like a monthly guest coming on at Heat Ratio. I love that dude. Very, very passionate when talking about the Eagles. He mentioned about Jonathan Gannon, about how energetic this kid is, right? From a defensive coordinator level. And people buy into that, right? Players buy into that. If you, number one, when you come in as a young guy, you have to earn the respect right away. You're not going to earn the respect by just being one of the boys. You got to do more to be one of the boys. You got to show that you're invested. You got to show that you're willing to work. You got to show that you have experience. You got to show that you've studied these guys and you already know what their tendencies are and what you're willing to help them do in order to accomplish their individual goals. So I think that's one of the things that we're seeing with this coach staff. Youngest coach staff in the NFL, Dan. Youngest coach staff in the NFL. So they're going to learn on the fly, so to speak, but that's not always a bad thing.
If they didn't have the O-line coach, they'd be the youngest coaching staff in Southampton.
My man Stoutman.
Yeah.
He's
township or wherever you're from. I mean, that's how young this coaching staff is.
No, you're right. You're right. And let's listen. Let's hope they learn, which they obviously I know that they will. But again, I think they're going to be an exciting team. They're just, they're going to be frustrating, but you're going to have to take the lumps. But they're not going to listen. This isn't a 3-win team. We have to remember that. We're not going to be the Detroit Tigers. We're going to be better than that, right? We have some veteran leadership on this team. You mentioned Darius Slay earlier. I really like the way that their secondary is playing up. I love the Eric Wilson signing. I know it's only a 1-year deal, but obviously a really nice guy to have as a linebacker core. So it's going to be very, very interesting moving forward. But let's get to the music segment. We talk about always adding some music into the show. And I know everybody says, oh, Tony's the DJ guy, the hip hop guy. I gave everybody a little curveball tonight because we're not going to talk hip hop tonight. Okay. We're going to talk about one of the most famous and exciting rock bands of all time. A special place in my heart. And the reason why we're going to talk about this group tonight is because this year alone, they hit a tremendous milestone. Now, we all know social media runs predominant when it comes to our everyday lives, right? Especially when it comes to music, right? Not just sports, but especially when it comes to music. But this is going to blow people away because it blew me away. Okay, and I have to read it because of this. But November Rain came out in 1992. Unbelievable song. Obviously, we're talking about Guns N' Roses. Okay, November Rain, that piano, right in the beginning. I mean, there's just nothing else does it for me like that. Okay, that's like an Alicia Keys moment. That's like when you can play the piano like that. Axl Rose was unbelievable when it came to November Rain. The reason why I bring this up, that is the oldest song ever to be streamed over 1 billion times on YouTube. The oldest song ever to be streamed that just shows you how relevant Guns N' Roses still are today. Now, the reason why I bring it up, Guns N' Roses to me is one of those groups that everybody can tell you at least one song. Everybody. I don't care who you are. Somebody knows who Axl Rose and Slash are, right? Somebody knows who that are. Now, they broke in the late 80s. Now here's the interesting part. Before I bring these things up, I always research certain things. I want to give you guys some really good statistics about the group, about the numbers, the money they made. But I would have thought, Dan, and I was completely wrong, but I would have thought Sweet Child O' Mine was the first song released from Guns N' Roses, and it wasn't. It was actually Welcome to the Jungle. There you go, right? So
Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah, exactly. The first album, Appetite for Destruction, right? Again, unbelievable album. I remember it like it was yesterday. The Knocking on Heaven's Door song was unbelievable. Just everything about, but again, the big three, obviously, when you talk about Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child O' Mine, and Paradise City. And I still remember, and Dan, we'll get your moments in a minute, I still remember that when I was a youngster. Now that came out, Appetite for Destruction, July 21st, 1987. To this day, over 30 million copies sold. When that came out, that was the first time I got cable in my house, was that summer. So I remember throwing MTV on, watching MTV News with my man Kurt Loder. Everybody remembers my man Kurt. Okay, and going to Welcome to the Jungle and see Axl Rose come off the bus, right at the bus stop, coming off the bus. Well, you know where you are. You in the jungle, but so again, they're the moments that I remember, and I remember watching it. It was the old school Comcast wood grain cable box that I had. It was like huge. Now it would be a dinosaur. But Guns N' Roses, Dan, not just whether it be moments, whether it be songs that you remember, or anything from the album or the group that you want to bring up.
Yeah, well, first of all, getting back to the old school part of my moniker here, in 1987, I was a senior in high school. So, so that was the time in my early years of high school. You had Rat, you had Scorpion, Bon Jovi, Runaway, 84, I believe that album came out. So, and then you started getting proliferation of White Snake, Great White, crappy bands like that. I'm not a huge Poison or Motley Crue group compared to Guns N' Roses, but it was almost too much big hair. They weren't Led Zeppelin, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So, at first, I was a Yes, Asia, Supertramp, Moody Blues, U2 kind of guy. So I wasn't jumping on board with them right away. But in my older years, as I, college, young parent, getting back to like what jumps out at me, Welcome to the Jungle is right up there with Living on a Prayer when it comes to stadium theme songs. Like, Flyers are on the ice to Welcome to the Jungle. When you go to the Flyers games back in the day, they were skating warm-ups to that song. You know how the stadium gets crazy when Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer and Welcome to the Jungle comes on. So that jumps out at me. And of course, this band was famous for their drug use, unfortunately, and alcoholism. And they had some crazy stories. I remember the Slash story. And you can help me if I'm wrong. He was so wasted, like he was like doing a heroin phase where he thought he was being chased by like a lizard and a snake man, and he was buck naked. He crashed through a glass window in Arizona. I think they were touring in Arizona. He like was standing behind like a maid of the hotel, hiding behind her. Then he ran full speed through the golf course, and he went into the maintenance shed and was hiding behind a lawnmower. So he was found buck naked. And when he was interviewed by the police, he was still wasted. He actually recanted the whole story, how he was being chased by lizard men and snakes. That's a moment I remember on the news, hearing about, I guess it was late 80s, Slash, a little out of it.
Just a little bit.
But the man's a top 50 guitar player of all time. The man can play guitar.
And he could probably play the guitar all sauced up, and I could play sober. So, right. But you bring up an interesting point, because number one, I will say that Welcome to the Jungle, the biggest thing I remember with Welcome to the Jungle is, well, I can say with the group themselves, they have some of the most prolific intros ever. Right. Yeah. So Welcome to the Jungle to me is the biggest thing I remember. Welcome to the Jungle is it being in the soundtrack from Lean on Me. Okay, with Morgan Freeman, because right in the beginning of East Side High, it's Welcome to the Jungle, right? So I love that movie, one of my favorite movies of all time. But if you talk about prolific intros, Patience, where you have Axl just humming and whistling right in the beginning, Sweet Child O' Mine, the guitar play. Yeah. By Slash, November Rain, the piano play. They have some of the most prolific intros ever. And you mentioned, Dan, there was a lot of groups back then, man. I was a Poison guy. I was a Motley Crue guy. I was into all that. Like I went full circle when it comes to music. I liked so many different genres. It's not even funny. But I remember back then. You did say Whitesnake, who I think they were kind of fraudulent. But you brought up Bon Jovi, which is a great comparison because right, and I know they're a little different. Bon Jovi wasn't as extreme, right? Who was Richie Sambora? So Richie Sambora versus Slash is a little different, right? But I think just knowing that at that time it was flooded with that kind of music, but GNR just stood out on another level. And when you went the Appetite to Destruction, and then you had GNR Lives. And then you had Use Your Illusion 1 and 2.
Came out simultaneously, right?
Exactly, which is a great point because nobody ever did that.
No.
Right? No, Live and Let Die. I mean, there was listen, we could go on and on and on. And again, they had their issues. Obviously, late in their career, they split up and, they were inducted into the Hall of Fame and Axl didn't show up. But the thing is, right now, they're still touring. In 2021, they're still touring, right? So that is amazing to me. I mean, listen, we all know the Rolling Stones are still I get it. They're probably twice the GNR's age, but still, just to know that they're still touring, I think is pretty infamous. Now, we talked about YouTube views. One number I want to hit you with before we get out of here is Sweet Child of Mine. Most viewed video of the 80s on YouTube. 700 million times. So I think people have to understand the reason why those numbers are so historic is because that means 700 million times somebody typed in Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine, and listened to that song. That's huge. You have to remember we live in a digital society now. We're not taking and blowing the dust off the record and throwing it on the vinyl. We're not putting the CD in. We're not putting the tape in and hit high speed up. This is what people do. And to know that they did that, Sweet Child of Mine, that's pretty impressive, man, because that song, that still hits today, Dan. It really does.
Now, I was trying to, when you told me this topic, I was trying to think, you can't say anything is an underrated song, but if there's an underrated song that you would put ahead of a highly thought of song, I would go, I mean, you mentioned November Rain. That's one of their top 3 songs of all time, but I would put Don't Cry over November Rain.
Oh, I love Don't Cry.
And that's not as heralded as November Rain.
You're right. You're right. It's not. And it may be because of the extended version of the song. It may be because of the piano play, but Don't Cry is a fantastic song. I honestly think one of their greatest songs ever is Patience. Yeah. And again, that's not even talked about. It's not because it's not one of those big 3. It's not one of those top
Mr. Brownstone. They have a lot. Listen, Mr. Brownstone, Paradise City, Welcome to the Jungle, Rocket Queen, the Sweet Child of Mine. These were all on their first album. I mean, you hear usually you buy an album for 1 or 2 songs, right? Back in the day, before you, it's like I remember. Everyone remembers the first album they ever bought with their own money. Mine was Pieces of 8 by Styx in the late 70s. I loved every song on that album, but then there's some albums you bought later where two Kansas, only 2 songs I really liked on the album. Appetite for Destruction had hit after hit after hit. You just can't go wrong with that album.
No, and it's funny because it's just like I just mentioned Patience. Name another song off of GNR Lives. I don't know. I just knew I liked Patience.
Yeah, that wasn't quite as prolific as the other one.
Right. And you mentioned the first album, it was a tape that I ever bought was Bobby Brown, Don't Be Cruel. That was my first album I ever bought. Loved that. I still listen. I can listen to that man. I can listen to that album front to back right now. I love it. Absolutely love it. But to your point, man, normally back then, I mean, that's why you go to Tower Records, you buy the singles. Because sometimes the singles were better than the album. You could just buy the single, but I don't need the album. I'll just take the single because that's the only thing I want to listen to, right? Jay checking in says Mick Jagger. 78 Mick Jagger. My God. Him and Steven Tyler, boy. Still trying to get it done.
Mick Jagger just triggered David Bowie because you remember they had a thing going on those two. But anyway, David Bowie got punched out by Axl Rhodes. He
Really?
showed up, he showed up on while they were working on an album. I guess he was like a guest. He popped in and he was like hitting on Axl Rhodes' girlfriend. And in the history of music, there's nobody that had worse temper than Axl Rhodes. He just walked up to him and knocked him out. And then David Bowie got himself together, actually apologized, and they went out drinking together. All was forgiven. They were friendly. But that's another classic Guns N' Roses story where Axl Rose decked David Bowie. Going in on Axl Rhodes' girl.
I did not know that. That is inside information by Dan Old School Green. Loving every minute of it. Love it.
You're all week.
I love it. But look, we're going to close this down. We hit an hour, went a little over, but all good. We talked a lot of good topics, man. We talked a lot of good topics, as always. Got that music talk going. As always, man, Heat Ratio Sports, give us a follow at Heat Ratio Sports on Twitter, at Heat Ratio Sports on Instagram, at Heat Ratio Sports on TikTok, Heat Ratio Sports on YouTube. We have tremendous amount of shows and content. Everybody, you might not like every show, but pick what you want. Listen to us all, or listen to one. Who knows? Listen, you hockey guys, listen to Flyer Nights, right? You're just a hockey guy. You might not want to talk about basketball. It's all good. We got something for everybody. Got a couple new shows playing as well. College football coming up. Possibly a wrestling show, and we also have an NFL betting show that will be live every Tuesday every Tuesday night as well. And our betting show, which for right now is going to be solo. My man Dave Glockner is going to run that for a little bit so Mark gets freed up. So that's going to be pretty cool. What's that?
Dave's a beast.
Yeah, dude. I'll tell you what.
Those two, man. I would love it. I think I know my stuff. And Tony, you know your stuff. Those two are like quantum physics sports. You know what I'm saying?
They're on top, man. They're on top. I told Dave only under one circumstance he needs to wear the glasses. That's all I told him. As long as he wears the glasses, he can roll. Yeah, he can roll. He can roll. But again, just give us a follow. We got a lot of interesting things planned. Obviously, we had a lot of live events planned. And again, I'm not sure. We're living in a weird time right now. Don't know what's going to happen with that. But as always, you can at least keep viewing us right here remotely from your own house. So, like I said, thank Dan Green for checking in and holding it down as my co-host tonight. You'll be able to see more and more Heat Ratio personalities on this show. And don't forget, every Sunday night, starting with the first Eagles game, 7 p.m., Heat Ratio Sports, we will have our own live post-game show. Could be just me and Dan. Could be just Dan. Or it could be me, Dan, Vance, Nikki Nuts. Could be Jay. It could be everybody. We could have 12 people up here. Who knows? We have we already got Adam already asking, when's Flyer and Ice coming back, Dan?
Adam, we have Chris Terrian coming up, and then we have Jason Martinez soon after. So we're going to be hitting you in the next couple weeks, probably 2 shows the next couple weeks, and then we'll get training camp shows going, and before you know it, season starts. Listen, considering what a crappy team they were this year, Flyer and Ice put a lot of content out there. So I got to thank my boys, Nikki, the Scaltosti, Vance, Mr. Smooth Crew, and Nikki Nuts Crisco. My crew, man, we put a nice year together considering a bad hockey team.
That's when you know that you got skills, man. No pun intended, my man Shaq. I got skills, man. But when you could put out creative content when your team absolutely sucks, that means you got one hell of a crew. That's all I got to say. Right?
My crew.
I love it. No pun intended, Vance. But as always, locking it down, Heat Ratio Sports. Everybody, give us a follow. Check us out. Engage. We're there. And everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch you next week.
Good night, everyone.